Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 32 to the Mystery School podcast. We are diving deep into the flat earth paradox. Finally, spending the time to actually go into this. I know for the longest time we said we weren't going to do it, but you know what? We figured why not? Give it a shot and just get it done and over with and behind our tool belt of ideas and thoughts. Just going right into it. What is flat Earth, and where does the theory originate from? And is there any validity to these claims? So, just knocking it right out there. I mean, really, before we were able to observe the known universe with telescopes and seeing other celestial bodies, for us to really start thinking about the concept that we don't live on a flat, or as some other people like to call it before that time, a cube, for some reason. I mean, there are literally texts of people talking about if they go so far, they will literally fall off the side of the planet, and they feared for that. You know, navigation across oceans was so early and new that they were just trying to figure out what the hell we were living on. Um, and is there any validity to it? I mean, could no, but yes, to a degree. The idea that we live on a completely third dimensional just ball is so, I don't want to say asinine, but so counterproductive because it's much more than that. I mean, we live on a very rugged type of oblong shape. I mean, it's not normal. I mean, if anybody looks at any map, that is the wrong type of interpretation of how the Earth is supposed to look. That is just built for ease of access for you to read a map, so you know at least where you're going. That's not giving you any real representation of what we're living on. Does anybody want to hop in real quick?
Um, yeah, can you hear me? Is my mic on? Let's see.
It's a little glitchy.
Yeah. But what about those maps? Yeah, hold on.
Well, I'll say something in the meanwhile, is that flat earth theory most likely originated from limited perception or understanding, meaning that there wasn't a way, or at least in our prescribed history, there wasn't a way of actually reaching such an altitude to view the shape of the earth. So people just started to generalize their perspective and their view field, um, looking horizon to horizon and saying, well, that's flat, and not really taking a second guess or contemplation of what land really was and curvature, etc. So I'd probably say originally it started as misconception, but then completely evolved into occult like thinking and grew into something that is still plaguing the world today. So
Xenox, did you want to hop in?
Uh, I was gonna say historically, it's really interesting because the church originally had thought and believed that the Earth was flat until you had all these pioneer scientists come out saying, no, it's round. And they were literally burned at the stake and executed and excommunicated from society because of their scientific discoveries and thoughts until that became common knowledge. Uh, and now it's evolving into something else.
No, very much. Thank you. Oh, Andrea, you wanted to go?
And like I don't think like thinking of the earthly existence as like a flat plane um is something that's totally like crazy to think about, especially if you are trying to artistically render the idea of different realms existing in one place. So like you have the earthly plane, but then you have a heavenly plane above it and maybe like a demonic plane below it, and something like that, but it's should have always stuck to something that was metaphysical in mind instead of being something that was trying to being shoved into a 3D reality. Because once you start talking about Earth being a Minecraft flat world, it just starts to go off the deep end in a way.
No, yeah, that's a great point, Andrea. Because when we think of planes, I think that overall shape of it can be argued, and you can get into quantum physics and toroids and all that kind of stuff. But when you think of like the ethereal aspect of it, it's almost like anyone who does get really into spirituality, they realize that there's all these different dimensions and realities kind of pancaked on top of each other. Um, so it's like you have these different dimensions that are almost on like a different frequency, like a radio, where they are almost, I guess, metaphorically on top or under each other in that regard. But then you start getting into the human language and trying to interpret all that. So it's just more and more of a psyop.
No, I 100%. And, one of the things that we have to look out for as we, continue our path into awakening and trying to really break through this boundary that we constantly feel ourselves in when facing somebody who has these beliefs. And one of the big things that you have to really try and reinforce is with society's knowing of science and technology, why do some believe we still live on a flat plane? And the thing is you just got to keep reinforcing the fact that the world is very, very complex. And to just say that we are a flat, spike, pretty much a reverse spike in the sky, and everything else around us is a hologram, everything else that we try to achieve, all of the quote unquote money that is poured into and that has been poured into the science, all of the technology that has come from the science, believing that is fake, believing that none of that was even possible is not only denying human endurance and human enduring and human achievement and overcoming something we never thought possible many, many years prior. I don't want to give a date because before 1969, the idea of anybody even going to space and landing on the moon is just baffling. And having it televised. Now we're not going to go into the fact that the moon landing was faked or not. We're going to go with the assumption that 100% it was real and that was an enduring American human achievement, regardless if we were going against the Soviets. It was still a very powerful human achievement that we took a group of 3 people in a tin can and launched them in space. And they took pictures. They documented it. And what we see is that it's a flat. What what we see is that it's a ball. But what they keep trying to see themselves is that no, it's flat and you're lying and there's no way. Why, if it's round, why aren't there any round tendencies? And one of the one of the most important things you have to get them to grasp, I know you won't, but you have to try, is scale. You have to allow them to visualize the pure scale on how big of a planet we do live on and how much bigger planets can actually get. We are unique, but there is still a very vast, interesting universe out there. And to disregard things like the James Webb, to disregard things like some of the other telescopes that have given us very profound images, like the Hubble being one of the most famous. To disregard that, to deny that, it's not only a disservice to humanity, but it's also a disservice to curiosity. I know I've been.
But
I know.
the thing,
Yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say, but the thing is, Scoop, it's the reason why we have flat Earth as a conspiracy theory is the same reason why we have, Bush did 9/11 as a conspiracy theory. Is the reason why we have you just pull any conspiracy theory, a rabbit out of the hat, and have it be. It's for the same fundamental reason, and it's that we have been lied to.
It's distrust. Yep. It's 100%.
Yeah, it's a fundamental distrust. And so it's like, okay, so you can see all of this, you see all of this technology, and it, like you said, it is incredibly complex and hard to understand. Okay, so now let's imagine we take like my little iPhone 11 that I'm currently doing this on. If I went back 300 years and I somehow had reliable internet service and my phone was charged and I was able to show them what this was, I would be cast out of whatever group I was in for being some kind of black wizard, or some kind of black magician, I should say. And it's because, it's such a hard thing to comprehend that, like, once you're beyond the limit of what you as an individual can understand as like reality, it becomes magic. That's why it's like, there's like a saying that's like, today's magic is just future technology, and there's a lot of truth to that. And so when you have these things like, like when people try to fathom, like, like the moon landing, for example, and you try to fathom the complexity that is required to build the machinery and the human ingenuity that is required to then be able to do the math to then take you out of the solar system. And it's a lot of math.
Yeah.
And like it was one of the things, like when I was in high school, I went to a STEM school, and it was one of the things that we had whole classes on at our school, just talking about just like how you apply the mathematics to different areas of life. And, not to shit on the average person, I think it is largely due in part to the way that we're taught math in school, is that the average person maybe, and it's a strong maybe, has probably an 8th grade algebra level understanding of mathematics. Now, the mathematics that is required, to even, let's just say, calculate the curvature of the Earth, that's getting into like high school territory. So like you're going to already have to be just above average just to do some of the more fundamental, proofs that you can say that exist for the Earth being round. And it's something that is really hard to, like you said, to wrap your head around. And so once you almost check yourself out of being able to be like, okay, I can't understand this, then it just leaves it wide open for conspiracy theories to run amok, obviously. And like we were saying, it seems to have started out of ignorance, but I think sometime in the 1900s, in the 20th century, the concept of flat Earth, probably in the later half of it, was hijacked and then, used to then steer a certain subset of the population who otherwise would have found deep truths and probably would have radically changed the worldview, and change their view of the government and all these other kinds of things, you send them down an alternate rabbit hole where they get stuck down, where you can't ever really find anything deeper. It's like, I really wish I could find this image again. I was scrolling through my phone, but it was like pretty much, if you can imagine, like it was like a giant hole, and then it had a list of like all the different conspiracy theories, like Palladians and like all these kinds of theories, right? And then there was the other side, and then it was the flat Earth rabbit hole, and it was a rabbit hole, right? But it was significantly smaller, and it had a dead end to it. And that's where I think like a lot of it has turned into, where it's like they just hijacked people's ignorance and then sent them down a wrong path, and then give them just enough whatchamacallit, it's like stuff that seems to be right, just like if you don't look into it, like, okay, like it seems like this, like what you're saying could be right. You give them just enough that, and then you also flood the entire world with just enough lies so that they don't know who to trust, and so they trust that seemingly okay information. Couple that in, you couple it in with some religion in it as well, and you have, boom, you have the perfect conspiracy theory for, oh, just to put it cruelly, like the average midwit.
And you're not wrong.
Yeah, that happened to my sister. She started following this truther when there were a whole lot of truthers during the boom of the Q movement, you could say, and he started going into like politics and spirituality, and he was giving a lot of good information. I can't remember his name, but he was actually pretty young. He's probably like 18, 19, 20. He was like a blonde kid, famous on Instagram, and then he fell off as soon as he started going into flat Earth, and then he mentally couldn't take it, and then a lot of people were just like haranguing him, and my sister got into flat Earth for like a second, and then she probably realized it was BS. But the thing is, now she doesn't go into any conspiracy theories at all, really. And so I think it's quite a potent tool at that.
You know what?
But
You make a very
going
beautiful point. I don't mean to
hold
cut
on
you off.
to
Keep
hold your
going.
thought for a second, sorry. I wanted to go off of what Andrea was talking about earlier about the whole mathematics and ignorance thing, and I want to give like a secondary tree branch there off of that, which was we had our ancestors who also knew that the Earth was round. Our primitive ancestors used I guess complex mathematics and stone tools to look at the stars and calculate them down to like super accurate degrees, and they had like advanced knowledge of the stars and stuff, and so they knew the Earth was rotating, and that there was a circular element to that. But yeah, go ahead, Scoop.
No, I mean you essentially answered the next question. I mean, when was this discovered? I mean, it really is ancient times, and a lot of the information, you know, they knew we're just really finding out and discovering now due to translations. But it's still fascinating to me how the past, if you go back far enough, they tend to know more than we do now about the planet we live on. And as modern physics keeps growing, and what it teaches us is that, well, one of the most important things that it teaches us is that if you go on different points of the Earth, you're going to see different constellations. You don't see all of the stars in the sky at one point at one point on the Earth. Now, if we were on a complete flat plane, you would be able to use a telescope and see everything in the sky. However, you can't. And the argument can be said, well, we have the dome. It makes everything fish-eyed. Well, even so, you essentially have the entire universe zoomed in on you if it's fish-eyed then. And you would still be able to see everything. You would still be able to take a telescope and look around at all 360 degrees of the night sky, but you cannot. You have to move around the world to see all of the constellations, which is very fascinating within itself. Um, and oh, go for it.
No, I was gonna say, it's like, if you want to know how far back this stuff goes, this was I was trying to find this dude's name, but oh, I'm gonna butcher this. His name is Eratosthenes. All right, Greek, obviously.
Aristophanes. Yeah.
Aristophanes. Yeah, that sounds way better. So he was born in 276 BC. So obviously a very long time ago, and he's best known because he's done a lot of mathematical proofs about, like, the curvature of the Earth, or specifically the circumference of the Earth. And he also was he was the first to calculate Earth's axial tilt, and he also created the first global projections of the world, incorporating parallels and meridians. And yeah, but like you said, the people of ancient times seem to have a better grasp of the Earth, because that is quite literally all they had. That's why they're, people to this day still reference texts that were written 2,000 years ago about astrology, because that's where the science of the stars is what it would have been considered back then. That's all that they had, were the stars. And the Earth is all that they had to discover more about. And so if you were just a naturally curious person and you were around for the Library of Alexandria, like this dude was, it was the perfect combination for you to figure out all of these kinds of mathematical calculations, because they didn't have Candy Crush to get distracted by. It's kind of like a, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, kind of makes you want to bring things back to nature. When you think about things like that, how technology was supposed to be this great liberator, and I mean, it has done obviously fantastic things. We're able to have this podcast because of it. We're able to have friends from all around the world, yada yada. Are able to share all of this information, but that's the thing, is you're able to share all of this information, and it's just too much for our feeble little human animal brains to be able to handle. And so that's where you get things like flat Earth and stuff like that.
No, very, very good point. And is the flat Earth theory manifested delusions, or are there claims that hold weight in the scientific community? Now, let's just be frank. There's a lot of things flat earthers get wrong. A lot of things. Most of them have a good heart, I want to say. The problem is back to what Andrea said, it comes from a level of distrust. So whatever they're going to be spouting, it is purely under the guise that they do not trust what they have been told. And flat Earth to them is the easiest thing to grasp, because it's the thing that they feel we've been lied to about the most. However, and that is a very big however, you cannot rule out the fundamentals that have been established, because it goes back even before the government even existed. It goes back before whatever we thought modern day was. It goes back even before we even had a concept of why we're here, what we're doing, and we're still trying to figure that out. However, we have a much larger and much better grasp at that, but there are still people still trying to figure it out. And we are here to help them, as always. Go for it.
So I have a thought. Okay, so a lot of flat Earth falls back upon the Bible. There's no denying that, right? Like, I genuinely have not found a flat earther who has not referenced the Bible in any way, shape, or form. So when you come back onto that, I do have a genuine question. I want a flat earther to answer. Okay, so Jesus came back from the dead, right? And 40 days after that, right, he ascended into heaven and is seated at the right hand of the Father. I know my Nicene Creed. But his body ascended into heaven. But there is a dome over the earth, okay? How did he do that? I'm genuinely curious where that
And you know
logic,
what?
I guess you can say, gets to its final end.
And you know what? That's a very good lead into what the fuck is the firmament. So, Junk, I want you to take this one away because I think you would explain the firmament so beautifully.
Okay, well, to start, I want to answer Andrea's question. They had a hatch at the top that they opened right as he was ascending. Um, no, you guys, come on. Okay, the firmament, again, is, shall we say, an archetypal reference that you see in the Bible, meaning it's a barrier between the micro and macrocosm as we know it now, but to them, it was that between heaven and earth. So, and again, it was more symbolic than anything else. But flat Earth community took it and ran with it and became a Simpsons episode. And the thing is, the firmament itself, that barrier that's keeping everything alive on this planet, is the atmosphere. Okay, it's the atmosphere. And the reason I say that is because when you look up at the stars, you take out your iPhone, you point it at the stars, and you zoom in max, you're going to see the starlight dancing around and making different colors and shapes. And you're going to be like, oh my God, it's not real. There's waters above, is a common thing that flat earthers reference with the dome. But the truth is, there's a clear distortion of light that passes through the constant of an atmosphere, because an atmosphere is not just one fixed thing. It's not it's not solid. It's quite literally ever moving, and that distortion paired with the actual lensing effect of light coming from far off galaxies and stars, that is what causes the blurring effect. And something, again, the firmament is, shall we say, a conversation that's near and dear to my heart because I can break it apart in 2 seconds. And I'll give you 2 words: backyard astronomy. Okay? Backyard astronomy. You know what that means? It means that you don't have to go out and trust NASA for 4K, 8K resolution, although it's your best source right there if you want to see that kind of quality. But what I'm saying is, if you really want the internal confirmation that everything within the universe is living, is alive, exists, isn't just a Photoshop copy of whatever, then look at backyard astronomists. These guys spend $1,500 on a nice telescope, spend their entire evening outdoors just to get a time lapse and, color developing light lens. And they capture, granted, not as high quality as NASA, but they capture the same exact thing. Now, what does that tell you? It tells you that if we are currently amidst a dome, a very limited source of habitation, then looking on and seeing other references, shall we say, planets that reflect our own planet, then that is the reference you need to look outside of yourself. It's like a butterfly, for example. Butterfly doesn't know of its wings. It can't perceive everything about its wings. But when a butterfly sees another butterfly, it sure can.
Well,
And that's exactly what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
and taking this a step further, if we're going to reference the Bible, and this just came to my thought, or came to my head, if God created us in his own image, why would he create Earth only unique as a flat plane, but every other planet in the universe has a spherical? Now, I want to go into my thought process on it being spherical, and I want to take Junk's idea of it being atmosphere a step further. And I want to say, I would personally say that I would say that the firmament is 100% the magnetosphere. It is the thing. It is our literal protection against the sun. It is the thing that gives us the aurora borealis. It is our dome, but it's a spherical dome, and it's made of energy. It's not made of glass. It's not made of some hard, thick material. It's made up of the Earth's electrical circuit, and it's ever evolving. It's ever changing. It fluctuates, just like we do. And it's there to protect us. As time goes on, we're in a period of it weakening, but once it's done with its process and its cycle, it will go right back at 100%, and it will be as if nothing ever happened, and it will go back to doing its job as being the shield. So it's very fascinating if you look at the science of the magnetosphere and directly read the text that has to do with the firmament, and it's 1-to-1. Go on, Xenox.
Oh, I was gonna say, hey, John, what about the ice wall?
Oh, the ice wall. That's fun. Can Scuba, I know we said we weren't going to do some proofs, but can I just throw a few out there, please?
Go for it.
Like the pull of gravity, you guys. The pull of gravity. Let's just think about what gravity is. It keeps everything at its centermost point. And when you think about a sphere with no constant shape, it gives you the exact same gravity wherever you are around it. However, if we were considering a flat Earth model, everything would be pulled directly to the middle of the plane of existence. That one blows my mind. And then, of course, you get into the concept of time zones. Why do we have different time zones? If it's a single flat plane, it's because there's different day and night cycles. And yeah, I mean, again, I'm not trying to. Andrea and I, we all spoke about this, but the purpose of this episode, I don't think, is to debunk. It's just to allow you to expand to the fullest potential so that you can make an accurate assumption of what you're perceiving, not just hearing what you want to hear and running with it, but rather observably, objectively observing reality from where we are into the stars and making, your assumption from there. But Xenox, the ice wall, just glaciers that humans can't climb. I don't know what to tell people, but yeah.
No, 100%. We don't want to sit here and knock anybody who is a believer in flat Earth. We don't want to knock you. However, we are going to try and poke and prod and get you to see a different perspective, because it's far more complicated than that. Now, this next question was a curveball for me. I don't even remember making it. So, take it away, Junk.
Yeah, so what is hollow Earth and how does it relate to the flat Earth concept? Do the two share any similarities? Well, again, something that Scuba alluded to at the very beginning of the episode is realizing that it's not necessarily supposed to be a perfect sphere, right? And I say that for two reasons. One is that there are different high points of gravity on this planet, that it almost looks like if you look at the actual gravitational map of Earth, it looks indented at sides. It's like a deflated basketball almost. But even beyond that, you have to realize that when we study such concepts or proofs of sacred geometry, it quite literally displays divine design and how everything formulates from these mathematical, models. And so the idea of hollow Earth is assuming that there is space between a land inside nestled within this planet. And what you're seeing with this graphic that Scuba just pulled up, the one on the top right is a real image. The top left is basically demonstrating how when we receive different bursts of solar wind, and the solar wind captures within the magnetic field and then creates these disturbances at the poles, otherwise known as aurora borealis or southernmost, they're not just happening that way. There's actually a prismatic amplification, and that's due to, as I've come to study and realize openings. The Earth is more of a torus shape, but even greater than that, the internal structure of the planet is a toroidal equilibrium. It's this amazing hypergeometry that maximizes the potential of manifestation, meaning that you're not wasting space, and that God, source, doesn't waste space. So everything has been mapped out to efficiently provide enough habitat for as many living beings as possible in coexistence, while also encompassing it into a singular finite area. And that's why, whether you believe Hollow Earth or not, you have to take this into consideration of, if we can assume that sacred geometry reveals the continuation of free energy by folding in upon itself, then why not too the planet? I mean, we look even more macrocosmically and see galaxies do the same. So it would just make sense that everything found its divine order. And this is one of the most fascinating ones that I think really stands the test of a proponent against a flat earther, because there are shared similarities. There are lands beyond our own. What does that mean? It means that those two concepts of living beyond, quote unquote, an ice wall is enough to actually propose that the land extends beyond the surface, subterranean. So I just want to, we could do a whole episode on it. I just wanted to give a little brief intro.
No, I appreciate that. I also want to apologize for people who are watching the recording. I put this graphic up earlier. Junk had sent me this during our session, and I had misplaced it, so it was supposed to be placed here. My apologies. I am not trying to reuse assets. Just a little mix-up. I apologize. Moving on. To what degree are these societal perspectives influenced by such three-letter or agencies like the CIA? So, I would say, and Andrea alluded to it earlier, very, very, very heavily, because they have butchered it so much to where if you're in a little group of people and you start talking about conspiracies, there's always that one fucking guy that has to bring up flat earth trying to dismiss you. And that is a very bad problem that is plaguing a lot of people who are trying to get the truth out, because there's always that one person that just interjects and it just says, something that triggers you, they're triggered, and they just happen to bring up something, and it correlates you to flat earth, and then the other people around you are somehow agreeing with him because they see it too, and you're just like, no, I didn't even know. But go on, Xenox.
I mean, look at SGN. One of our favorite patriots out there, so to speak, that gets into political analysis,
Fellow Rumbler.
global politics, and yeah, fellow Rumbler, and he's a big Q figure, but he is a huge flat earther. He thumps the Bible hard, and then goes right into the flat earth. He doesn't push it in every episode, but I'd probably say 1 out of 100 episodes he has on it, he goes into flat earth, and when he does, he's very passionate about it. I think that's shows just how easy this disease could be spread.
And honestly, flat Earth makes the perfect cover to cover a lot of the shady stuff that goes on in space. Because if okay, so you think about like the worldview of somebody who like who like is a flat earther, right? So like none of the stuff that goes on beyond the firmament, beyond the dome is like in a sense real almost.
Well, yeah.
And so okay, so if it like let's go into it, right? Moon landing was fake.
No,
Okay,
let's
what if
really
it
go
was
into it, Andrea. How about all the stuff we constantly document? All the stuff junk looks through. They don't spend the
yeah.
time or even to think about that.
Well, no, and it's like, yeah, exactly. They don't think about that. They don't think about, okay, why haven't, what other reason could we have to possibly have that why we wouldn't have gone back to the moon? Okay, if you want to disregard, we lost the technology because that seems complete bullshit, even in my opinion. We definitely have the technology. We just didn't have the will to go back to the moon again. And why would that be? Well, what if they found something on the moon that maybe they just didn't want to have to deal with or have to talk about to all of us plebs on the earth, right? Okay. What about all of NASA's lies, right? Like all of this money that gets funneled into NASA, that gets funneled into the DoD and all of that just seemingly disappears, right? Like where is all of this money going? Well, flat earth is a perfect cover so that you don't think about, uh oh God, is it Solar Warden?
Yep.
Is that yeah, okay, yes.
Gary
I
McKinnon.
wasn't sure if that was
Boom.
yes. So it's like it's a perfect cover for not for blocking off thinking of things beyond this earth, because that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm no longer a Christian anymore, why I don't hate on the Bible. I like other books more for spiritual purposes, frankly. And the reason why is because it just limits everything onto this one earthly plane. Like the biggest conflict I have with the idea of the Christian God is that, I see all of the stars, I see everything that, is beyond this planet, and I'm like, okay, so this God created all of it, right? Okay, so that's the thinking. God created all of it, the stars, everything else. Okay. So did he also create all of the planets around all of the other stars and all of the other galaxies and just created it to be a barren wasteland and have no other forms of life anywhere else in this foreseeable universe? And be like, okay, but then what if he did? Okay, then did he create those um living creatures on other planets in his own image? And see, it's like that was the rabbit hole that I personally went down that led me away from Christianity, because of this whole of thinking of outside of this world. And then also a concept that I've been toying with myself is like internalized versus externalized divinity, because a lot of the people at the end of the day who believe in flat earth believe fully in an external divine source, but believe they are too incapable of having a divine source within them. And because humans we're weak, we're terrible, we're basked in original sin, if you want to go down that route, right? And we can really accomplish nothing in the eyes, like we're created in his image, but we can never be as wondrous as God can be. And that was always the thing that I didn't agree with, and that I always resonated with an idea of a God within myself more, right? And when you start going down that kind of rabbit hole, that kind of thinking, it's just incompatible with the kind of thinking that goes along with flat earth. And I said it earlier, but it just simply is a midwit mind trap, pretty much, because the IQ is another rabbit hole I've been going down. And one of the things I looked up in preparation for this is, frankly, they're very limited studies, but every study that has come out with religiosity and IQ, so how fervently religious you are, is negatively related with IQ, meaning that the more religious you are, on average, the less intelligent you are. And So it, like, it all funnels back in. I know there are very smart flat earthers out there, like you said earlier, like SG Anon. He wouldn't be able to do the host the kind of show that he had without having, some kind of intellect to him. But it's it's a very easy trap. It's the easiest trap for somebody who is below average in intelligence. And it's a very tempting trap if you are above average in intelligence and also have any kind of religious fervor to you, specifically Christian. So, it just huddles all of these like people into this one little worldview, and it blocks them from being able to perceive anything outside of it, and it just fits in very well with Christianity. People want to be Christian. They want to believe in Jesus. They want to believe in, all of it. And our society was built on Christianity, so you can't really knock them for it anyways. But it's
Hey,
just
Andrea,
it's just
can I tie
I,
can I tie something in?
yeah.
Jesus rode the dinosaurs. No, I'm just kidding. No, you made a really good point, and I want to answer it via the law of one, which is when we look out and we're looking for life, because the biggest thing that we have collectively come together and unified under is search for others out in the cosmos. Well, the law of one states that the planets that we can visibly observe, the ones that are quote unquote barren or devoid of life, is literally just the cycle of a planetary's consciousness through healing, basically terraforming for the next batch of souls whenever it's finished and ready to go. So that answers the question of why do we not see life on other planets, is because life has been selected to be seated here on this planet. And that, I mean, you can't let that get to your head and become narcissistic like you're the center of the universe, but it's telling you that not only are there habitable planets, that there are many out in the cosmos that are exactly as we are, surrounding neighborly planets that are barren, but it's just them. And that's to consolidate experience, to focus on the archetypal lessons of soul growth. However, the whole point of NASA pushing, because I believe it's NASA's both the user and the distributor of this theory, because they realize that they can have mathematical confirmations and really bare bones. They have enough funding to at least seem governmental, but the moment they propose or they at least entertain or continue, because I feel like it's a psyop in itself, but the more that they fuel or energize the flat earth movement is to do two things. One is to ensnare constant, active, honest truth seekers from finding the truth. And number two is to conceal the evidence of life upon other planets. And that means aliens, extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, etc. Because when you convince in the collective that from decades and decades of observation that we haven't encountered life once, that puts a focus on control and fear tactics to maintain this kind of hoarding of knowledge, but also corralling the public into a space where they're not becoming active free thinkers. They're saying, okay, well, this is all there is. So they look around and they scavenge in the dirt and they find, oh, the earth is flat. This is where we, belong. And then they get sucked, as you said, into that trap. However, having NASA discredit alien life doesn't mean that they aren't telling the truth about other things. This is something Scuba and I talk about extensively, is that, such missions as the James Webb Space Telescope, that deployment that took many years, we're getting real feedback, real data. And even the ones that they actually showcase around the sun, this 72-hour feed of just nonstop pictures, those aren't edited in any way. It's because the truth hides in the smallest crevices. And if you're not, what shall we say, as Andrew said, smart enough to discern where to look or how to actually observe reality, you're going to be told what reality is. So then you become susceptible to influence, and that, again, funnels you back into the flat earth trap. So, and again, I want to just, disclaim really quick, we really do love our flat earther friends. We know, as Scuba said, you guys have a huge heart. You have a very powerful drive for curiosity and confirming factors. However, if that energy was used elsewhere to innovate this planet and not necessarily fall under the contraption of or the singularity of limitation, then we could do some amazing things as a collective consciousness. But it's because they segregate us and they really, they take the weak ones from the strong and they try to make us weaker. And that's why we're having this conversation right now, is because we're trying to lead you back to center. We're trying to show you that all your energy shouldn't be focused on what shape the planet is. That is trivial. The true purpose of your energy and your momentum throughout this life should be getting to know who you are. And as Andrea said, finding the source of energy of the universe within you, because you are the microscope looking in. And that's why it's super important to not be persuaded or distracted into such a ambient subject. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's about how you make the most of your life. And I just wanted to say that, Scuba. So thank you.
No, absolutely. That was super beautiful. And it really answers, is the Earth actually flat, or would its shape more closely resemble geometry of a higher density? And this is something that I have been burning and wanted to say. We got to stop thinking of it as a sphere. We have to start thinking of it as something more akin to a tetrahedron or a dodecahedron, something much more complex in the fourth, fifth density type of geometry that we aren't even really fully thinking of, because there are many points that go very high. It's only just recently that we discovered that the pyramids are 8 sides, not 5. So that's very interesting. I can't help but have this burning gut feeling that the Earth is much more than just a sphere. They just do a sphere as a cop-out because they don't want you to think about all of the very precise placements of pyramids. They don't want you to think about the possible energy centers that are mountains, or the possible remains that are mountains that are still hold energy. They don't want you to really go beyond that type of idea and really think about geometry in a very interesting manner, because it's very possible that the Earth itself is sacred geometry, because it's everywhere. We see sacred geometry everywhere we look on the planet. How is it that the planet itself can't be a very complex geometrical shape? Xenox, go for it.
Oh, you kind of took the point you were making and went a lot further than I thought I was going. So no, you're good.
Does anybody want to hop in on that? I know I kind of went very far down that was very Law of One territory. So
I have a kind of like a surface level kind of look at it. I mean, you could say, some people even question, like in the mainstream, that the Earth is more kind of egg shaped than a perfect sphere. On the other hand,
vector equilibrium. What does that even? What's that mean?
Sorry. No, vector equilibrium is the actual shape of the geometry that's within the planet. That's like the foundation.
Okay.
Everything else is this kind of curvature that surrounds that.
Okay. Interesting. So we kind of talked it to death. At this point, we can't talk about it anymore. I'm very glad that we were able to get this behind us and really get this topic and conversation off our tool belt. It was a really, really, really nice talk. Also, Junk just sent me a very nice picture to demonstrate vector equilibrium. So I'm going to throw that up right now. There we go. Look at that. So yeah, as I was talking a little bit ago, I can't help but have this burning feeling that the Earth is more akin to something like this, but a much more in an invisible manner that we can't see with the naked eye, and we have to look through a more energetic lens, or connect the dots, so to speak, because I feel as though that it's not something that's going to be right in your face. You have to look for it because the Earth is so massive, and I'm going to go back to scale. It's so fucking massive that you wouldn't be able to see it. You'd have to be able to scale it down to see it on a more reasonable scale for your perception to pick it up, because we just don't have that ability to physically zoom out of the planet at will and look at each individual point and just kind of connect the dots. Yes, we could do that in Google Earth, but then again, that leads into the whole trust thing, because who knows, they could be fudging that, and that's been proven they've been fudging that. So it's fascinating. But again, we've talked this part of the conversation to death. I don't even know if we can give any more thoughts on flat Earth. We went everywhere with it, and I'm very happy that we went everywhere with it. It very much opened the door for us to talk about Hollow Earth, which we might be discussing. But however, we do have a slate of conversations set for the next few weeks, so look out for that. As far as this week's topic, that is it for this week. Junk, are there any promotions that you want to shoot off before we end for the recording?
A little ambiguous, but if anybody's in the Shasta area, I'm going to be hosting a live Mystic Soundscapes event where we're going to be diving into shamanic atmospheres and constantly evolving through this live meditation. It's really cool. I'm going to be performing live. So aside from that, if you guys want to get your own personalized meditation, I do Sound of Your Soul. It's a service where we've had great feedback from, and I would love for you to check that out. And you can find all that on my page and at the website, thequantumlight.us.
And let me throw some graphics up for that. 1 second. Actually have to find those docs. There they are.
Are we gonna do any space reviews tonight?
Oh yeah, but that'll just not be on the recording, because I can't.
Can we do a separate recording?
Maybe. I want to do something special with that. But now you just made me lose my train of thought to get those things up. So I'm going to send you those for post. Put those up for Junk, please. But yeah, that was this week's episode.
I noticed you skipped a question, though.
I did. We're going to talk about that later. We might as well make that.
It's not going to be in the recording?
No, we're going to make a whole topic about that one.
Yay.
Anyways, everybody, have a good rest of your night. Have a good rest of your week. And we will see you soon. Bye.